Hello and welcome to Inclusion at Work. I'm Nadine Vogel, your show host, and someone who is very proud to be interviewing Tom Harris, Executive Vice President and Chief Distribution Officer for Penn Mutual. What we're going to be talking about today is the role of financial services professionals, especially as it relates to the topic of special needs planning, or planning for the future of children with special needs. I look forward to having you join me in welcoming Tom. Tom, I'm so glad to have you here today to join me. I'd like for you to share just some of the incredible work and commitment that Penn Mutual has made, not just to your financial services professionals at large for the incredible work and important work that they do with families, but more specifically the commitment that Penn Mutual has made to families that have children with special needs or disabilities in terms of not just planning for lifetime care, but really planning for quality of life.
Yeah, thank you, Nadine. I'm really glad to be here, be with you today. Yeah, Penn Mutual, first and foremost, believes in delivering our financial professionals being the ones that deliver the advice to the end consumer. And be it a business market, estate planning market, or as we're talking about today, the special needs marketplace, we want to make sure that our financial professionals have not only the products that they need, but also have the education, the training, so they completely understand that market and are able to develop plans and provide advice that's tailored to the specific needs in each market. And obviously special needs has many of those same elements where a financial professional needs to not only understand life insurance and planning and trust structures and things like that, but they really need to understand what it is that those parents of special needs children need to plan for so that not only during their lifetime, but also in many cases beyond the parent's lifetime, those children are taken care of in the way and with the quality of life that the parents would want, both while they're here and after they're gone.
You know, Tom, I'm really glad that you talked about quality of life, because often when we think about planning for our kids, we think about lifetime care. We think about food and shelter and all the basic necessities. But that's not quality of life. Quality of life takes it to another level, right? It's about ensuring that after we're gone, our children will still be able to go, to Disney or to movies or enjoy life in the same way, if possible, that they did when we were alive. And when I think about the name of Penn Mutual's program, Advocating for a Brighter Future, it really resonates with me that it's all about that quality of life. So I wonder if you can share a little bit about what went into developing that name, what the name of the program means to you.
Well, I think the advocating part is both the parents advocating for their child and the financial professional advocating for the types of planning that the parents need to do in order to make sure that they get the outcome for their child that they want throughout that child's lifetime. So that's what I think the advocacy is about. It's about raising the voice for somebody that may not be able to raise it for themselves. In this case, the special needs child. So it's the parents doing what they can, and they're going to try to do everything they can. They love this person. They want to make sure that this person is taken care of. And for the financial professional, it's how do they kind of dovetail into that love and compassion and provide the planning, the products that will allow those parents and that child to have that quality of life. And so that's what I think the advocacy component of that is all about.
So Tom, it sounds to me like the Penn Mutual program is really multifaceted, especially the training program for your financial services professionals. Because what I'm hearing is that you're not just training these folks on legal issues and financial issues, which certainly is important, but it sounds like you're also training them on how to appropriately communicate and engage with the parents and do so in a way that's respectful and appropriate for them as well as for the child with the disability. Could you share a little bit about the program?
Yeah, it's a program that we've run for the past several years, and frankly, Nadine, many of the financial professionals that have raised their hand for coming into our home office and going through a multi-day training, they have the same personal story that you do either directly with their own children or families or friends of theirs. And so they definitely, I would say that a common thread among those financial professionals that come into this training is that they've already been impacted in some way. And they understand how important it is what they do, what their role is, and how they communicate to the parents so that the plan can get done and they can get over what are obviously extremely emotional issues and emotional topics. So the training is addresses the how as much as it does, I think, the what. The what is the product, it's a structure and things like that, and it's vitally important to get that right. But I also think in order to get there, the how and how they communicate and listen to the parents and who they're doing the planning with, that's also an extremely important component.
Well, Tom, obviously the how is just as important as the what, if not even more. So when we think about this training, it's my understanding that you have approximately 50 or 60 financial service professionals that have now gone through the training. While that's wonderful, it's probably a small percentage of your total financial service professional population. So the question is, how do we ensure that when a family meets with one of the financial service professionals who maybe have not been trained, and if they have a child with a disability, that they still get the help and support they need? In answering that, someone has shared with me that you really believe in partnering and partnering up the professionals to help one another and better serve the families. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that piece.
Well, I think we do team up, and so in this case, we may only have 40 or 50 or 60 financial professionals that have been through the full-blown training and are really committed to this market. But the fact of the matter is, they have their peers that are running into situations, and what happens in those cases is that they'll pair up and use the expertise of the financial professional that's been trained and bring them into the case. It's not that different than if somebody's an expert in estate planning or somebody's an expert in business succession planning. You go to those experts. If that's not where you're in the deep end of the pool in terms of your knowledge, you go and you pair up. And we do that in other markets, and we certainly do that with the special needs market as well. And we're not going to stop doing this training. We'll continue to expand our footprint, but definitely it gets amplified by the folks that are trained, working with those that aren't, and partnering.
Tom, when we think about the prospects of special needs planning for families, we always wonder, is the person who has a child with a disability better positioned to do this work, or does it really matter? And I'm wondering what your perspective and the perspective of Penn Mutual is on that particular issue.
Yeah, I don't believe that you have to have that personal connection. I do think those folks that do have a personal connection probably get into it more readily. But I believe all of our financial professionals have a passion to help people. And so that would apply to parents of special needs children as well. And so they can get into it. The key thing is they get into it in a way that they educate themselves and they understand what the market's about, what the requirements are about. And they, I've seen advisors do that in multiple different markets. But yeah, I mean, if an advisor has an immediate relationship, does it make it easier or does it make it more immediately relevant to them? Sure, but it doesn't preclude other financial professionals from getting into this market as long as they educate themselves.
Tom, I've heard you say in multiple occasions that to do this work correctly, it starts with asking the right questions. And I think that applies to so many things, not just special needs planning. But as it relates to special needs planning, what would you say are those right questions?
Well, I think it's first and foremost asking the parents, in a perfect world, what would you want to have happen? We may not be able to get to a perfect world, but I would want to hear from the parents. What are their wishes and dreams, both while they're alive and then after perhaps they're gone, for the quality of life and the things they'd like for their child to experience. So I think that would be the starting place. And then you get into a more granular subject about assets and things like that. And while you may not be able to achieve the ideal, obviously you'll try to get understanding where the parents want to go. You'll get as close to that as you can, given the practical issues of just, how much they have in assets and what they can do. Again, I think I would start with that. What is the ideal, and hearing it from them, and then go from there.
So Tom, when you're talking about those right questions to ask, one of the things that you mentioned was, having enough assets, or identifying the assets that a family has. And that certainly is the base to some of this planning. Because as you know, we have federal laws, one in particular that says if we leave someone with special needs anything over $2,000, we automatically lose eligibility for government benefits. And obviously that's the big concern for families. But we have such complex laws. It's such a complex environment for families. And then obviously for our financial service professionals to keep up with that. So how do we keep up with that? How do you ensure that your professionals are on top of all the laws and as they're changing, so that families know that they can rely on Penn Mutual for this planning?
Well, I think very carefully, because you're right. It's not only federal laws, but there are also state laws, right? And so you have to understand the location. Is that the state that they, the parents, for example, could live in New York today, but maybe they're going to retire in Florida, and so I think it's you've got to keep up with the plan. So the plan may be the plan today, but it's something that needs to be monitored to continue to make sure that you reap the best out of all of the programs that are available, as well as the most effective use of your personal assets. And I think there it's just staying on top of things, staying on top of the changes, and regularly monitoring the plan. In that way, it's not really different in the special needs market versus other plans, right? They should all be monitored once you have them in place. Right. It's just that the ramifications are so dire here if you get it wrong, that I really think a sharp focus on regular monitoring is key to this marketplace.
So Tom, I think what you're saying really reinforces the importance of face-to-face planning, and face-to-face planning with financial service professionals that have been trained, and as you said, keep up with that training, right? It's not just a once and done. But we're all sitting here in the midst of a pandemic, and as a result, everything is taking place virtually. So I'm wondering how that virtual environment is impacting the financial service professionals at large, but more so in terms of special needs planning, how it's impacting the families and their ability to meet with the financial professionals to do the planning. Because, with COVID, these issues haven't gone away. If anything, they've become even more important.
I really think we've been at work from home since the middle of March, and we have seen our financial professionals continue to provide their clients with advice, get business, in force at a rate, frankly, that we saw prior to the pandemic. We have digital tools, digital platforms that allow our financial professionals to continue the planning process and complete the sale of the products that are necessary, and they've done it all digitally and safely. And I think that's been true in the special needs environment as it has been in other markets as well. I think one of the things across all markets that our financial professionals realize is they can get in touch with people easier now. It's easier to hold an appointment. People aren't out, well, I'm going to be out of town next week. You don't get that kind of, delay in the process. And I think too, Nadine, not again just in the special needs market, but across all markets, people I think are thinking. This has made them think more critically about the need to get their planning in place, and it has been very difficult, a very rough period for hundreds of thousands of people and all across the country. But I do think that if there is a silver lining in that, it is that people have been motivated to plan and get their financial house in order, if you will, and that will benefit them long term, even well beyond we get out of this pandemic.
Tom, it's interesting, as I've had an opportunity to speak with Penn Mutual's financial service professionals who are working in the special needs space, one of the things that they've shared with me is that working remotely has actually helped with the families in a number of ways. One, the families often, are challenged with childcare, appropriate childcare, to come to an educational workshop, to come to a seminar, and now they don't have to do that. They're home. But for the financial professional, what we're hearing is that it allows them to almost have a window into what happens in that family's home. What are those child's needs? What goes on, over a period of a couple of hours? And it really helps in that planning process, because they do have some just better perspective on what the family needs. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I'm inviting you into my home here, and that's what they're doing, right? They're inviting you into their home. You're not walking across the threshold, but you're virtually there. And that takes, you need to trust somebody to do that, right? And not only to invite them in, but then to have that conversation that's so important. So I think that's changed. I frankly think this is an element, this kind of virtual thing. It's not, we're going to be Zoom all the time forever. But I do think there are efficiencies that can be picked up here. To your point, if they can't get the whole family there, you maybe have two trustees, one in New Jersey and the other in Florida. You can have a conversation all at once, so everybody's on the same page, and do it via this digital platform. And so it's not just more efficient from a travel standpoint. It's more effective sometimes from a planning standpoint, because you can get all the voices that need to be in the room at the same time.
I think what I'm hearing and I'm gaining from this is that this virtual world does have some advantages, because certainly I think for the financial services professional to hear a parent describe their child and the child's disability or the ways in which it manifests versus seeing them on screen, seeing them through that window, I think it does add to perspective, which helps the planning process and helps ensure that it is truly more tailored to the needs of the child and the family. Now, another question that I wanted to address is, what about this issue of planning, not just for when the parents pass, but let's say we do have a child that has near normal life expectancy, but is not going to be able to live independently or even semi-independently, or the parents choose not to have that child live perhaps in an independent living center or a group home. So how does that change the planning process for retirement? Because typically when we think about retirement, we'll go south where it's warm or live on the beach. The child's moved out, they're on their own, they're independent. How does this impact planning when that's not the case?
Well, yeah, and it could be that the parents at some point are going to need help themselves if they're going to stay in the home. And I went through that with my mom. We tried to keep her in our family home for as long as possible. And one of the ways we did that was, we brought in healthcare workers to help her do certain things that, she couldn't do herself. And that let her keep the quality of life up for as long as possible. And I think the same thing is true here, where the parents, they may have needs, or they may not physically, even if they don't have needs, they may not physically be able to do what they did 30, 40 years ago for the child. So they may need help. And so that's just an extra thing that they're going to need to think about is, while we advance in age, are we going to need both for us as parents and for our child that we may not be able to continue to provide as we age. So I think that, that's one thing to think about. But obviously the positioning of their other assets and how they transfer, that kind of thing, those are all important too. If they have IRAs and things like that, they need to think about how those assets eventually transfer.
So Tom, this speaks to me as a special needs parent very directly, because I always say that if anyone understands this concept of what if, and when, those needs are going to be there, it's a special needs parent. And I suspect that's what you're getting at, or what you got at in these most recent comments. Would that be true?
Yeah, I mean, we have on our life insurance policies a benefit where if you become, later on in life, if you have needs, it's not long-term care, but it allows you to pull some of that death benefit forward and use during your lifetime for, that kind of, that financial need that you didn't anticipate. Obviously, long-term care is another thing that's a great product for that. It's not one that we sell, but our financial professionals are, they have relationships with carriers that do provide that, and that is obviously part of the equation. But again, life insurance does have some flexibility in that regard to provide dollars in those kinds of situations.
You know, it's interesting, Tom, when I speak about special needs planning, whether as a parent or as a professional, I find most people don't even know what I'm talking about. But when they do, there's always a question of if it's a company, let's say a financial services company doing this work, you know, what's behind it? Why are they doing it? And for me, it's about alignment with a company's values, about a company's commitment to diversity. I've spoken with so many folks at Penn Mutual that I walk away from that conversation and I get it. I get there is total alignment. But since I don't work at Penn Mutual and you do, I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, at Penn Mutual, we have a values-driven, relationship-based culture. That's both for our home office associates as well as our interactions and relationships that we have with our financial professionals, and we believe in turn they have with their clients. So it's really important to us that the formation of those relationships with underlying values are really an important part of who Penn Mutual, the Penn Mutual associates and Penn Mutual financial professionals, how they comport themselves. So I think that is in alignment with forming those relationships with parents that may have special needs children. I think it's very much aligned. We're very focused as a company on life insurance and annuity products. We want to be focused because we want to be an expert and deliver that expertise to financial professionals and their clients. So I think there's a really a good alignment between where Penn Mutual wants to be as a company and where we are as we position Penn Mutual through our financial professionals with the special needs community.
So Tom, when we talk about alignment and alignment with values, we were talking about it relative to the Advocating for a Bright Future program at Penn Mutual. But I also think there's this alignment of values for the parents in the planning process. So obviously step one is doing the planning, the legal and the financial. But the third piece of that is something called a book of intent or a letter of intent, which is really a letter of instruction that the parent leaves for whomever is going to provide care for after they're gone. And that's really where those dots connect for the family, that the financial, the legal, and the heart, if you will, come together. And I believe that your program helps the financial service professionals understand that piece so that they can also help the families with that, because as you know, the book of intent or letter of intent is not something the attorney does. It's something the family needs to complete, but they still need some guidance on that. What are your thoughts?
No, I do, Nadine. I think, we talked a little earlier about, how does the financial professional start the process of planning with the family? And I think the first thing and the best thing to do is say, what is the ideal situation what is the ideal outcome? And get that on the table from the parents. I think the letter of intent is just a continuation of that, right? So now we're at this point where, okay, now the planning's in place, but do you want to talk to that guardian who you may not get a chance to talk to during your lifetime and really convey what it is that you would want, how you would want for your child to be cared for, and maybe share some stories that give some context about why this child is so important to you, and hopefully somebody will pick up that baton of caring for your child. So I think that's a really important thing for the parents to make clear in that letter of intent, and I think that again, is just the connection from the beginning of the process where you need to find out what they would really want for their child. And then that's the handoff. That's the handoff after they've carefully planned. I've got everything in place financially, but now I need to know that the caring is going to continue. And I need to share the way I'd like that to be. So I think that's an extremely important component of the process.
Tom, as a special needs parent, I have to just tell you that the Advocating for a Bright Future program just does my heart so good. It means so much to me on a personal level because I directly benefit, as do other families, from the work that you're doing. So thank you for that. What I'd like to do now is give you an opportunity. If there are financial service professionals out there that would like to become or have an expertise in the special needs planning arena, and not sure where to go to get that training or what company perhaps to align with or why, I'm wondering if you would like to say a few words directly to them to help them through that process.
Well, I think first and foremost is this is a great market for them to be in if they educate themselves and they're equipped to really help the parents and the child. Life insurance is about planning for the unexpected. A special needs child is a curveball and something that was not expected by those parents. And to help them get through that unexpected event and have them really focus on, after the planning's done, the care and loving of that child. That's, I think, a tremendous thing that a financial professional who, again, is educated and trained in this market can help a family with. And I can't imagine anything to be more rewarding than that, to lift the burden of thought about what's going to happen. I don't know. Lifting that level of uncertainty and allowing them to focus on the here and now. I think that's a pretty magical thing for financial professionals to be involved with.
So Tom, one more direct message I'd like to ask of you. If you have a special needs parent watching, whether they have a newborn baby or a child that's maybe 2 and has just been diagnosed, or they have an older child and they're starting to realize that they really need to do this planning, what message would you like to send to them about the reasons to come to Penn Mutual and why the planning in itself is so important?
Well, not having been in their shoes, I wouldn't want to overstep my bounds, but I would say that I think if you find a financial professional who really understands the needs that you have as a parent, and the needs that your child is going to have both now and in the future, find one that's in this market, dedicated to this market, dedicated to keeping themselves updated and informed about changes in this market. That's going to lift a layer of uncertainty from your shoulders, and I hope for you that you find that person.
Unfortunately, we are coming to a close, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you to you, to your leadership for bringing a program like Advocating for a Bright Future to Penn Mutual, for your financial services professionals and just the incredible work that they're doing for families. I can't thank you all enough for your commitment to the work, and I wish you all the best.
Well, I hope so, Nadine, and I really enjoyed my time with you. Really important topic, and I'm so glad Penn Mutual can at least be a part of the solution. So thank you.
Stay safe.
Will do.